Then Drake sat quietly in the shuttle as it descended through the pale blue clouds of Velethra. It was his first time on an alien world so full of beauty and silence. Giant crystal towers shone like glass mountains, and silver rivers curved through floating gardens. This was the capital of the Velethran Empire, a place where even the air carried soft music. Ethan had come as part of the human delegation to discuss peace between their worlds. But before they landed, the ambassador gave him one warning that kept echoing in his mind: never speak to the Queen. The warning sounded strange to him. Why should anyone fear speaking to another person, even if she was a queen? But the Velethrans had their customs. They said their ruler's voice was sacred, that no outsider should ever speak directly to her. Doing so was not only rude, it was considered blasphemy, a crime that could bring death. Ethan listened, nodded, and promised he would stay quiet. He had no wish to start an interstellar war by saying the wrong word. When the shuttle doors opened, Ethan followed the group down the glowing walkway into the grand hall. The summit chamber was like nothing he had ever seen. Crystal walls reaching into a high dome filled with floating lights that moved like stars. Dozens of alien races had gathered there, each one dressed in their traditional robes, shining armor, or strange biosuits. Yet none of them looked as proud or graceful as the Velethrans. At the far end of the hall sat their queen, Vethra. Her throne was carved from living crystal that pulsed with faint light. She didn't look cruel or cold like the rumors said. Her eyes were deep silver and her face carried calm strength. Her skin glimmered faintly like moonlight reflected on water. When she lifted her hand to begin the meeting, the room grew silent instantly. Ethan had seen soldiers, generals, and presidents, but none had her quiet authority. The summit began. Alien representatives spoke one by one, discussing trade rights, energy routes, and defense agreements. The human ambassador stood near Ethan, whispering translations into his earpiece. Ethan's job was to observe, take notes, and learn. He wasn't a soldier or diplomat, just an engineer sent to help understand Velethran technology if peace succeeded. But deep down, he already admired the Queen's calm presence. She didn't interrupt anyone. She listened to every voice as if it mattered. After several hours, the talks paused for a short break. Ethan stretched his legs and stepped near one of the tall windows. Outside, he could see the city floating in layers, platforms hanging in the clouds, ships moving like gentle birds between them. He smiled at the sight, thinking how far humanity had come to stand among such wonders. Yet even in peace, he could feel the distance between the races. The humans were guests here, outsiders who had to walk carefully with every word. Then it happened. A sudden flash of red filled the hall. The lights flickered, alarms began to sound, and the floor trembled under their feet. Somewhere deep in the walls, a reactor or generator had failed. Ethan's first thought was that it might be a malfunction, but the next moment a blast ripped through the far end of the chamber. The explosion threw guards off their feet. Energy sparks filled the air like burning stars. Panic spread. Creatures from a dozen worlds screamed, trying to escape. Through the chaos, Ethan saw something that froze his heart. The Queen was still seated on her throne, surrounded by falling shards of crystal. Her guards had been thrown aside, and no one had reached her yet. Without thinking, Ethan ran through the smoke. Someone shouted for him to stop, but he didn't hear it. He jumped over broken glass, pushed through the haze, and reached her just as another shockwave hit. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her behind a fallen pillar. Pieces of crystal crashed around them and heat burned through the air. The Queen's silver gown was torn at the edge, but she didn't cry out. Ethan covered her head with his arm as debris rained down. For a moment, the only sound was his own breathing and the distant echo of alarms. When the rumbling stopped, Ethan looked at her. "Are you hurt, Your Majesty?" he asked softly. The words slipped out before he could stop himself. The silence that followed was heavier than the explosion itself. Her eyes widened slightly, and her guards, who had just rushed into the chamber, froze in shock. Everyone had heard him speak. The human had broken the only sacred rule of Velethra. The guards lifted their weapons toward him instantly, their faces cold and ready to strike. Ethan raised his hands, realizing what he had done. He had saved her life and doomed his own. But then something happened that none of them expected. The Queen looked at her guards and raised one elegant hand. They stopped at once. She turned back to Ethan, her calm voice low and gentle. "You are brave, human," she said. "Do not fear." Those few words changed everything. The guards lowered their weapons. The chamber filled with whispers. The queen had spoken to him, breaking her own law. No one in living memory had heard her speak directly to an outsider. Yet she didn't look angry or afraid. She looked thoughtful, almost curious. Later that day, after the chaos had settled and the injured were cared for, the queen called for him again. The human ambassador tried to intervene, warning that it might make things worse, but she insisted. Ethan was brought before her in a private chamber filled with silver light. She thanked him for saving her life and said that by ancient custom, she could not allow the one who saved her to be punished. Instead, she gave him a new title, Protector of the Throne, at least until the danger was gone. The Velathron Council was furious. Many believed the human had used trickery to win the queen's favor. Others whispered that she had broken her vow of silence because of something she saw in him. Ethan didn't understand any of it. He only knew that he had done what felt right. He couldn't stand by and watch someone die, no matter who she was. That night, the city glowed with the soft light of its twin moons. Ethan couldn't sleep. He walked through the palace gardens, quiet paths lined with flowers that shimmered faintly under moonlight. He stopped near a crystal fountain and stared at the reflection of the stars above. That was when he heard a voice behind him, soft, familiar, and calm. "You do not fear us," the queen said as she stepped beside him. Ethan turned, startled. She was alone, wearing a simple robe instead of her royal gown. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. Her silver eyes studied him for a long moment. "Not anyone," she replied. "Many ran away. You came forward." They stood in silence for a while, watching the fountain. She asked about Earth, what it was like, how people lived, what it meant to be human. Ethan told her about the oceans, the rain, the cities that shone at night, and the people who dreamed even when life was hard. The queen listened with quiet interest, her expression softening with each word. When she finally rose to leave, she said, "Perhaps your kind is not as distant from us as I thought." Then she looked at him again and added, "They told me not to speak to you. Yet here I am." As she walked away, Ethan stood frozen, his mind filled with questions. Why did she speak to him again? What did she see in a simple human engineer that made her break her ancient silence twice? Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of something greater, something that could change both their worlds forever. And as the night wind carried the scent of alien flowers across the garden, Ethan realized that the rule he had broken might one day become the reason for peace between humanity and Velathra. The days that followed the attack were tense. Ethan moved through the palace halls under heavy guard, each step watched by Velathron soldiers and human diplomats alike. The queen's decision to keep him close was controversial. Members of her council whispered in dark corners, some calling him reckless, others fearing he might be a spy. Yet the queen ignored them all. She remained calm, walking beside him in the corridors, speaking softly about the stars, the oceans of Earth, and even the music humans loved. Ethan had learned that Velathrans were not only physically graceful but mentally sharp. They remembered everything, every face, every word. Their customs were strict but not cruel. They valued courage, intelligence, and respect for life above all. And now, as he walked beside the most powerful being in their galaxy, Ethan realized he had to live up to the trust she had placed in him. One evening, the queen called him to the observation terrace. The palace floated high above the city, where the twin moons reflected on silver rivers below. "Ethan," she said, "tell me again of your people. How do humans face danger? How do they decide who is worthy of trust?" He smiled, thinking of Earth. "We do not always make the right choice," he admitted. "Sometimes we fail. But when someone needs help, most people will step forward, even if it is dangerous. It is not perfect, but it is who we are." She considered his words carefully. "You acted without hesitation," she said quietly. "You risked yourself for me when others froze. That is not common among your kind or any kind, I think. Tell me, Ethan, do you always act with such courage?" He laughed softly. "I guess I just couldn't let someone die in front of me, even if that someone is a queen with thousands of guards around her." Her silver eyes sparkled faintly. "Perhaps that is why you are here, and why I spoke to you despite the laws of Velathra. There is something in humans, something I cannot ignore." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by urgent news. The palace security chief came running, his armor clinking, his antennae twitching with alarm. "Your Majesty, we have intercepted messages. It appears the first explosion was not an accident. Someone within the council or nearby factions attempted to assassinate you, and they may strike again during the final treaty signing. Ethan's heart sank. The danger was far from over. "Can I help?" he asked, standing quickly. The Queen regarded him for a long moment. "You have already helped more than anyone expected, but I trust your judgment. You may act if you see a way to protect us." By nightfall, Ethan had traced the source of the planned attack to a lower maintenance level of the palace. Where energy conduits ran like veins through the structure, he moved quietly, avoiding patrols and silent alarms, guided by instinct and a deep understanding of the palace layout. He found a group of conspirators working to arm a second explosive device. Their alien technology was complex, but not impossible for a human engineer to understand. He acted quickly, disabling the device with careful precision. Sparks flew, alarms rang out, but the explosion was prevented. The conspirators tried to escape, but the palace security, alerted by the alarms, caught them. Ethan's heart pounded, but relief washed over him. He had stopped the threat before it could reach the Queen. Later, the Queen appeared in the medical bay where he rested, exhausted and slightly injured from dodging falling tools and energy arcs. She sat quietly beside him, her calm presence a comfort. He looked at her, expecting some ceremonial words of thanks. Instead, she spoke softly. "They told me not to speak to you, Ethan Drake," she said. "Yet you acted with courage and clarity when all others failed. For that I owe you my life." Ethan smiled weakly. "I only did what anyone would do." She shook her head, her silver hair catching the faint light. "No, most would have frozen or run. You did not. That is why I spoke to you before. That is why I sit here now. Perhaps humanity is not as simple as I once believed." In the following weeks, the summit resumed under heavy guard. Alien representatives from across the galaxy were wary of the human who had saved their queen. Yet Ethan's actions could not be ignored. He was offered the unusual honor of attending the final signing ceremony as the Queen's representative. No human had ever held such a position before. During the ceremony, the Queen spoke of peace, unity, and trust. When she mentioned the human who had prevented her death, the assembly went silent. She praised Ethan not only for his courage, but for his honesty, intelligence, and respect for life. By acknowledging his actions, she broke centuries of custom, demonstrating that even a human could hold the honor of Velathron recognition. After the ceremony, Ethan walked beside her through the gardens once more. The twin moons reflected off crystal fountains, creating a silver glow that illuminated the path. "You have changed the galaxy tonight," she said. "I didn't do it alone," Ethan replied. "I only reacted to what was happening. You showed trust in me when no one else would." She nodded thoughtfully. "Trust is rare," she said. "It is rarer still between worlds. Perhaps humanity and Velathra can find it together." Over the next months, the Queen appointed him as her official envoy to Earth and Velathra, a role that required both diplomacy and courage. Ethan traveled between worlds, teaching humans the importance of Velathran customs while showing Velathrans the strength of human resilience. In every mission, he remembered the night of the first explosion, the Queen's calm beside him and the silent understanding they shared without words. Their bond grew quietly, marked by respect and mutual admiration. In private moments, the Queen would ask him about life on Earth, about music, art, and the small wonders humans often overlooked. He taught her to laugh at small mistakes, to enjoy the simple joys of a planet far from war and conflict. She, in turn, shared stories of Velathra, of history, of battles fought not with weapons but with strategy, patience, and wisdom. One evening, as they watched the stars above Velathra's floating capital, Ethan realized how much their worlds had changed. Humans were now respected. Velathrans were learning to trust outsiders, and a fragile peace had been born from courage, honesty, and a single human's decision to act when it mattered most. "Do you ever wonder," the Queen said softly, "why I broke the rule and spoke to you?" Ethan thought carefully. "I think you saw that humans are willing to risk everything for life and trust. That maybe there is hope in humanity you hadn't expected." She smiled faintly, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. "Yes," she said, "and perhaps that hope will guide the galaxy forward. Sometimes it takes a single act of courage to change the course of history." Years later, humans and Velathrans worked together on many projects: science, exploration, trade, and culture. Ethan's name was remembered on both planets, not as a soldier or diplomat, but as the human who saved the alien queen, the human who risked his life, and the human who proved that even small actions could ripple across the stars. And in quiet moments, when no one was watching, the queen and Ethan would sit in the palace garden together, under twin moons, just as they had on the night of the first attack. Two beings from different worlds bound by trust, respect, and courage. Proof that even the strictest laws and the deepest fears could be overcome when one person dared to act with heart. The galaxy had been changed, not by war nor by power, but by courage, trust, and a conversation that no one expected. A human and a queen had shown that hope. Understanding and bravery were universal, and so, even as planets spun and stars glimmered in distant skies, the story of Ethan Drake and Queen Siren Vethra became legend, a reminder that even a single voice could echo across the galaxy, breaking silence, building peace and inspiring generations yet to come.